Hello, my name is John Snubland, and I'm a member of the Judges Committee for the National Reining Horse Association. Today, it is my privilege to assist Dale Wilkinson in producing a videotape entitled Evaluating the Reining Horse. Dale Wilkinson is a horseman who needs little, if any, introduction. He is the first member of the Hall of Fame for the National Reining Horse Association. He is the only man to have ever won the National Reining Horse Association Futurity and the National Cutting Horse Association Futurity. He has also been the man who is responsible for creating the modern reining horse. Much of the language used in this tape, relevant to the way horses function and to the maneuvers that are familiar to us all, were created by Dale. I'm sure you'll enjoy his comments.
Thank you, number 208, Major Pine, Brian Wilson.
Evaluating a reining horse is done in two ways. One is by the expression of the quality of each individual maneuver that comprises a pattern. This evaluation is subjective and reflects a judge's opinion. Dale will spend some time in this tape establishing good, bad, excellent, and terrible standards for reining horses. The second part of the evaluation procedure is the defining of penalties. The penalties are specified in the handbook and the judge's guide, and it is not the judge's responsibility to establish how much a penalty deduction will be, but rather to establish when a penalty has been incurred. All penalties are by definition negatives. Later in this tape, we will discuss how these negatives, these penalties, will be expressed on a score sheet. All of the penalties involving National Reining Horse Association standards are outlined in the handbook, rules for judging, and in the judge's guide, and we will briefly review them on this tape. The most severe penalties are those which we define as being no scores. This effectively eliminates a horse from competition. Those infractions which cause a no score are willful abuse of a horse or misconduct by the rider. Abuse of a horse, as defined in the handbook, is that which a reasonable person, informed and experienced in generally accepted equine training and exhibition procedures, would determine to be cruel, abusive, and inhumane. A judge is thus compelled to disqualify any horse that he or she feels is being exhibited in a manner which is cruel, abusive, and inhumane. This may include exhibition of an animal which is clearly not in a fit or sound condition, the use of abusive equipment, and/or the use of abusive showing techniques by the rider. Misconduct by a rider can take the form of failure to present the horse and equipment for inspection after completing the pattern, or any disrespectful or unprofessional conduct by the exhibitor. NRHA judges are empowered to excuse any exhibitor who shows any disrespect or unprofessional conduct. Reining horses are scored between 60 and 80 points, with 70 denoting an average performance. The second most severe penalty is a penalty which results in a score of 60, regardless of the execution of the pattern. The penalties which result in a score of 60 are the use of more than the index or first finger between the reins, the use of two hands or changing hands, the use of the rommel other than is permitted, the failure to complete pattern as written, performing the maneuvers other than in specified order, the inclusion of maneuvers not specified, equipment failure that delays completion of the pattern, balking or refusal of command where the pattern is delayed, running away or failing to guide where it becomes impossible to discern whether the entry is on pattern, or jogging in excess of 1/2 circle or 1/2 the length of the arena while starting a circle, circling, or exiting a rollback. 60s are also occur during overspins of more than 1/4 turn. When using a rommel, no finger between the reins is allowed. The free hand may be used to hold the rommel, provided it is held at least 16 inches from the reining hand and in a relaxed position. Use of the free hand while holding the rommel to alter the tension or length of the reins from the bridle to the reining hand is considered to be the use of two hands, and a score of 60 will be applied. A score of 60 is also incurred in the instance where maneuvers not specified are included in the pattern. This may include a horse that backs more than 2 strides when a backup is not called for, or a horse which deviates in a backup by more than 1/4 turn. Refusal of command also carries a penalty of 60. In this instance, a judge must determine that a horse blatantly and continuously refused a rider's command, or where a horse freezes or balks other than in a spin or rollback. The next most severe penalty is the 5-point penalty, which occurs during freeze-ups and spins or rollbacks, spurring in front of the cinch, the use of the free hand to instill fear, holding the saddle with the free hand, or a fall to the ground by horse or rider. The NRHA defines a freeze-up as a complete stoppage of motion by a horse which delays the execution of a spin or rollback. In the event that a horse or rider falls to the ground, the entrant is allowed to remount the horse, realign the horse, and continue the pattern without further penalty from the 5 points which is deducted for the fall. Another area of the reining pattern where penalties often occur, and an area where your commentator is an expert, is those areas of being out of lead. Being out of lead is penalized by 1 point per quarter circle, with a full circle representing 4 points. Penalties are often occurred when a horse jogs, exiting a rollback, or beginning a canter departure. Jogging is never permitted when executing a reining horse pattern, and the penalties applied are 1/2 a penalty for the first 2 strides, jogging, exiting a rollback, or beginning a canter. Beyond 2 strides and up to 1/2 the length of the arena, or 1/2 the circumference of a circle, a 2-point penalty is applied. jogging beyond 1/2 the length of the arena or beyond 1/2 the circumference of a circle, a 60 is incurred. It should be noted that in a run-in pattern, a horse is permitted to be in any gait until the horse crosses the first marker, at which point it must be in a lope. No penalty is incurred up to the first marker for jogging or walking. Beyond the first marker, a 2-point penalty is incurred, and beyond the center marker, a 60 is incurred. A horse is required to be in a correct lead in all parts of a pattern where a lead is dictated. Exiting a rollback, no lead is dictated, however the horse must be in a lope. When the horse begins to turn, as in our graphic to the right, at the top of the arena, it is required to be in a right lead from the point of the turn, outlined as A, until the next stop. The penalty applied between the position outlined as A and B is 1 point. Between B and C is 2 points. A 3-point penalty is incurred if the horse is in the incorrect lead beyond the C point but does correct the lead prior to the next stop, and a 4-point penalty is incurred if a horse fails to pick up the correct lead until the next maneuver. It should be noted that there is no penalty incurred if a horse is on the correct, in this instance, right lead, rounding from A to C, and then changes leads approaching the next stop. Penalties occur in the spin maneuver if a horse fails to stop spinning at the exact correct geographical position in the arena. Overspins of up to 1/8 of the circumference of a spin are penalized 1/2 point. Overspins from 1/8 to 1/4 of the circumference of a spin are penalized 1 full point. Overspins beyond 1/4 of the geographical circumference of a spin are given a 60. In underspinning, a similar situation occurs. A horse that underspins up to 1/8 the circumference of a spin is penalized 1/2 point. Underspinning from 1/8 to 1/4 is a 1-point penalty. A horse that underspins beyond 1/4 of the circumference of a spin, but does realign to complete the pattern, is given a 5-point penalty. This is considered to be a freeze-up. Break of gait is penalized 2 points. It should be noted that this penalty cannot be incurred during the first quarter of a circle after exiting a canter departure. In this area of a pattern, the horse will be assessed all the penalties for being out of lead and jogging as specified earlier, but the break of gait penalty is waived. In all other areas of the pattern, every time a horse breaks gait, a 2-point penalty is incurred. A 2-point penalty is incurred if a horse fails to go beyond the marker when specified approaching a stop. It should be noted that a horse is required to completely pass the marker before beginning the stop maneuver. Every time a horse fails to do so, a 2-point penalty is incurred. As you can see, the penalties applied to a reining horse are simple and precise. However, many judges fail to execute this part of the evaluation procedure correctly. The NRHA clearly states that the benefit of the doubt should be given to the exhibitor. If a judge has to ask him or herself, did a penalty incur? It did not, and they should not apply the penalty. However, when a penalty clearly is incurred, every rider should be treated in exactly the same fashion, and the penalty should be applied evenly. The second part of the reining horse evaluation procedure is the marking of the horse's performance in the various maneuvers that comprise a reining horse pattern. In order to assist a judge in expressing his or her opinion about the various maneuvers, NRHA has devised a scoring sheet. On the scoring sheet, the maneuvers are broken down into 7 or 8 maneuver groups depending on the pattern, and the maneuvers are scored between -1.5 and +1.5 in half-point increments. An average maneuver is scored a 0. A poor maneuver is scored a -0.5, a very poor maneuver is scored a -1, and an extremely poor maneuver is scored a -1.5. A good maneuver is scored a +0.5, a very good maneuver a +1, and an excellent maneuver is a +1.5. At the end of a pattern, the score for each maneuver is added to 70, and the total of the maneuvers, penalties, and the beginning 70 mark equate the horse's total score, and thus the judge's evaluation of that run. Let's try an example of this scoring system in action as Dale Wilkinson scores a reining pattern. You'll notice that the first maneuver counts the same as the last maneuver, and you'll notice that Dale is not attempting to judge by comparison. He's evaluating this run and this run only.
Penalty 1. Zero. Zero. Penalty 2. Zero. -1/2. +1/2. +1/2. -1/2. Zero.
Notice that Dale gives a score for a maneuver and the score for a penalty immediately after the maneuver is completed or as soon as the penalty is incurred. At the end of the score sheet, there is a box for Composite Score. NRHA judges are allowed to appraise an entire pattern in half-point increments from -1 to +1. This composite box should not be used if a judge has been able to properly express his opinion by evaluating the maneuvers. In this pattern, as in most patterns, Dale has been able to express himself thoroughly by evaluating each maneuver, so the composite box will be left with a 0. The 2 penalties, totaling 3 points, are put in the section called Penalties and expressed as a negative. Thus, the score for the horse is a 67. Now let's go back and have Dale explain how he marked this pattern.
Begin at center of the arena facing left wall or fence. Begin on left lead and complete 2 circles to the left. The first one large and fast, the second one small and slow. Penalty 1 point, improper lead on canter departure. I marked this set of circles as 0 because it's an average ho-hum type set of circles that he's not really using the arena, he's not really redirecting his horse.
Don't do that. Okay.
At center of arena, stop and complete 4 spins to the left. Horse to be facing left wall or fence, and hesitate. We have an average stop. His turnaround has some motion, but it doesn't have much cadence in front. It's an average ho-hum 0 spin. Begin on the right lead, complete 2 circles to the right, the first one large and fast, the second one small and slow. Penalty 2. Improper lead on canter departure past quarter of circle. I scored these circles 0. The first circle became a little more aggressive. He was a little more resistant in the large circle. He drew down and just made a good average small circle. At the center of the arena, stop and complete 4 spins to the right. Horse to be facing left wall or fence, and hesitate. I scored this right spin -1/2. We didn't have very much motion, and as I looked down, we didn't have very good cadence in the front end. Begin on left lead and make a figure 8 on top of the large circles. I scored this figure 8 a +1/2. Horse takes off a little more aggressive, looks pretty good, guiding pretty well. Comes around, makes a nice lead change. Becomes a little more aggressive, is still guiding well. Back around and changes leads. Close figure 8, begin a large fast circle to the left. Do not close this circle, but run straight down the side past center marker and do a right roll back at least 20 feet from wall or fence. No hesitation. He starts this circle, good control and good speed. Starts to accelerate down the pin, sets up just a little, gets in the ground nice, and turns around adequate. And I scored that maneuver a +1/2. Continue back around previous circle. Do not close this circle, but run straight down opposite side of the arena past marker and do a left roll back, at least 20 feet from wall or fence. No hesitation. I scored this maneuver a -1/2. As he comes out of this right roll back, he charges and becomes a little out of control. He accelerates down the arena well, misses that stop, and had a very poor rollback. Continue back around previous circle. Do not close this circle, but run straight down the side past the center marker and do a sliding stop at least 20 feet from the wall. Back over slide tracks a minimum of 10 feet. Hesitate to demonstrate the completion of the pattern. And rider must drop bridle to the judge. I scored this maneuver a 0. Comes out of the roll back. He's flowing around the pin pretty good. He accelerates, stops fair, backs off a little crooked, becomes just a little rigid in his backup.
In this section, we'll discuss the various maneuvers in detail. Let's start with Dale explaining circles. Dale, can you tell us what you like to see in a circle?
From a judge's standpoint, John, I have to separate training and judging. I can't completely look at it from a judge's standpoint. I want a horse to stride driving from behind. I want the rib cage to be pretty near to the center, just a little bit of a flex to the inside of that circle. I want the shoulder to lay as straight in front of him as possible. I want the chin to be a little to the inside. I also want this horse to show different speeds, and I also want to see him be redirected fluently and very easily with the neck rein. John, here's a horse that comes as close to showing what I just described. Horse is striding up and driving forward off of the hind leg. The rib cage has a little flex to it. The shoulder is staying right in front of the hind quarters. Right here, he is redirected. He drops his face to the right, accepts being guided and redirected. He slows down, and I feel that this is a very good example of what I call form in a circle. John, this is another example of what I like to see in a circle. This horse is definitely striding off of the hindquarters. He has a little flex in the rib cage. Let's call it he's supple in the rib cage. He is not bent. He's just soft in the rib cage. His chin is to the inside just enough that he is pointing his head the direction he's going. Right here, he is being redirected softly. He slows down, comes into this circle. Right at that point, for my own purpose, I would like to see this horse dictated to just a little more. I would like to have seen him come to his neck with the right bridle rein, taking a little more hold of him, and come on into his small circle. That is personal preference, okay? All right, here's a set of right circles, same horse, striding forward, using these hind quarters. There's just not quite as much suppleness in this rib cage. The shoulder is laying in front of the horse, but the horse is not flexing quite enough in the pole or in the chin. I'd like to see just a little more suppleness in the chin of this horse. I'd like to see him take just a little more contact with the left bridle rein and show me that this horse will flex and move to the right, away from the neck rein.
Let's have a look at the spin maneuver, a very difficult maneuver. Dale, what do you like to see in a spin maneuver?
John, here again, I can't completely separate training from judging. I have to look at a spin as to how can a horse function that maneuver or make that spin as effortlessly as possible. My opinion of that spin is that the body alignment has to be as near straight as possible. The inside or the hock in the direction that you're going has to not be extended too far forward, and then this allows the horse to drive forward, the front end making a larger circle around the hind quarters. The front legs are taught to move or in a cadence. We want a series of short, quick steps in front. I do not like crossover. Crossover magnifies. Crossover is not ultimate in a spin. I like to see speed. I don't like to see speed that sacrifices form. Form being this cadence and alignment. I have an example of a spin that is more or less developed and executed as I have just described a spin. Now this spin is extended forward. The inside hind leg is pivot leg stays in one spot. Now the body alignment stayed pretty correct. It got just a little bit of bend in it. We had at the beginning of that spin a nice cadence, and she kind of lost the cadence, and the outside front leg started to come across. Her form was very good through the first two and a half revolutions. I would like to see this spin accelerate a little faster, maintaining that same form. I have another example of the spin. Now this left spin, it starts slow, and then you can see it accelerate. You can see the cadence that we described in the first spin. The inside hind leg stays somewhat mobile and straight, and this horse drives forward, maintaining that cadence that we were talking about with the front end. It has a little more sting or move and this is a very desirable spin for me.
The next maneuver we want to look at is actually a series of maneuvers. It's a run around the end of the arena, an approach to a stop, the stop, and a rollback. Dale, can you tell us what you think is ideal in this maneuver group?
John, when the horse comes around the end of the arena, starting his approach to the stop, I want the horse to be quiet. I want him not to be going in a pleasure lope. I want him to be extended but controllable. When he comes around the end of the arena and starts down for his straight run, I want to see him be redirected and lined out about more than 20 feet away from the wall. As he approaches the stop, the horse accelerates until he is asked to stop. His hindquarters go immediately to the ground. They stay in the ground. I want to see as light a contact with the mouth as possible. I can accept some pull or restraint in the mouth if the horse does not show resistance in the mouth, if the horse accepts this. Ideally, the horse has to elevate its back, put some strength in the hock, and drop those hindquarters close to the ground. Ideally, the front end should be fluent and almost a walking in effect in front. In exiting this stop, the rollback is just that to me. A rollback is right back through itself, back the same line that it came into the stop. A loop around, a bent turnaround is not acceptable to me. It distracts from the stop. Also, it takes away from the score of the stop. The rollback has to almost elevate slightly, and it is an immediate crack straight back through those hocks and come out of the straight line, come out of that rollback on a straight line. Lopes off quiet, then accelerates on back around the arena. All right, we have a rundown and a stop and a rollback. All right, this horse is not really guiding as well as I'd like to see him. He accelerates good, comes into the stop, holds the ground. Nice rollback with a little, should have had a little more crack to that rollback. This was a pretty good stop, but it's just a little distracting the way the horse fussed with his head, did not guide going around the end of the arena. As this horse runs around the arena, now he has to change leads here. He immediately becomes very quiet, very controllable. Now he's going to ask him to elevate and run, which he does. He drops his hindquarters into the ground and stops very well. The rollback was not real good, but it was acceptable.
Not all stop maneuvers end with a rollback. As we saw earlier in the tape, this stop maneuver is sometimes completed with a backup. Dale, what's ideal in a backup?
John, what I want in a backup is I want a horse's body to be pretty much straight, so all 4 feet can move backward in a straight line. There is a cadence in the backup. There is a lot of obedience in the horse's mouth and in the face. I want a horse that can be realigned or moved from side to side. I want to see a horse that is very obedient as he is backing up. That is, obedient in the face, but I want all parts of this horse's body to be functioning. We have this example here. This horse has a little trouble in backing straight, but all legs are working. He realigns well. He is soft in the face and has some speed. I think this is a pretty nice backup.
The next maneuver we'll examine is the figure eight. This maneuver combines the elements of the circle and lead changes. Dale, what's ideal in a figure eight?
John, a figure eight, to me, is a continuation of body alignment that was described in the circles. I like to see this figure 8 be a little more aggressive possibly than is allowed in the large circles, but this figure 8 also needs to be equal in size on both ends of the arena, and the center or lead change should be exactly in the center or the center marker of the arena. I want to see this horse be very fluent. I want to see it be redirected when necessary. I want to see the horse light and obedient. At this speed, I use this lightness, or expect this lightness, to be used for our redirection and our lead changes. And this should be a very aggressive and precise maneuver. I like the way this horse body aligned. I like the way that it redirected. I like the way it changed leads, striding forward, going into the next circle. This circle's the same size as the circle on the other end. The lead changed right in the center of the arena. I would have liked to have seen this horse be just a little more aggressive. Everything else was very nice. This figure 8 is the same desired body alignment. It's quite straight, not rigid, a little flex in it. The horse guides well, changes leads in the center of the pen. A little more aggressive than the first horse, which I like. Looks like he's trying to win something. Changes leads well in the center of the arena with a slight redirection of the right bridle rein.
Now that Dale has explained excellence in maneuvers, and we've had a chance to look at our penalties and at a system of recording penalties and maneuver scores, let's mark some ratings. We're going to show you 4 different runs of the same pattern, pattern 5. One of these runs is the run you marked earlier in the tape. Please mark each maneuver of these runs, and when you're completed, we'll go back and show you how Dale scored these same horses.
On deck, number 345, Craig Johnson with roping chute. 291, Terry Thompson on Gunsmoke Skeeter in the hole. Thank you, number 191. I'm Mahali Hobby Horse and Ian Gutierrez. Number 345, roping chute owned by Roberta and Denzel Robinson, Norman, Oklahoma. Craig Johnson riding. On deck, number 291, Gunsmoke Skeeter with Terry Thompson. 277, I'm a great step to Larry Rose in the hole. Craig Johnson, number 345, riding roping chute. Thank you, number 345, roping chute, and Craig Johnson. 384, Hollywood gunner, Tim McQuaid. Thank you, number 384.
It's been my privilege over the last few years to be associated with and to talk with some of NRHA's finest judges. In talking to them, I asked them how they improved their judging skills, and they have told me that they work at it constantly. The first thing they have to do is to make sure that they know the rules. And to do that, they envision rule infractions while reading the rule book so they can visualize what a rule infraction looks like. The second thing they've told me they do is they practice their judging skills constantly. They watch tape at home as much as they can, and anytime they're at a reining, even if they're not officiating, they watch it in a manner that is consistent with the way they would watch if they were officiating. The third thing they tell me is that they have always tried to improve each time they mark a reining. They're never totally satisfied with their performance. If you keep these three things in mind and practice real hard, you might one day get to be as good as some of our very best.
I have spent my entire life trying to understand how horses function. I have tried to understand how form is relative to function. The reining horse to me is a very intriguing animal. The maneuvers that they make, a lot of the maneuvers are very unnatural for a horse. To capture this horse's natural ability, it is my opinion that these horses have to have a certain body alignment for it to be possible for these horses to execute these maneuvers at the greatest of ease. So they will be a pleasing horse to watch, plus they can make these very difficult maneuvers. I hope that what we have done here today will be beneficial to you to understand more thoroughly what and how a reining horse functions. And at this time, I would like to thank John Snoblin for his participation, and I thank you.